gentlemen, a very good morning and welcome to this, the 64th episode of the Coffee at 11 show. Delighted that you've chosen to join us and thank you for being here. And in particular, I want to welcome my special guest, Mr. Eddy O'Shaughnessy. Eddy, can you say hi and show us, have you got a coffee mug there with you, please?
Yeah, good morning. Lovely to be on. Thanks for having me, Colm.
Indeed, it's our pleasure. And of course, today's show, as ever, is brought to us all by wigwam.ie SME peer support. Eddy, really lovely to have you here. Let me just tell you, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit about Eddy before we bring the man himself in for what I expect will be a fascinating conversation. So Eddy O'Shaughnessy, business name Eddy O'Shaughnessy, because this started as a business show and it's rapidly changed into something far greater. What does your business do? Eddy says, I have a franchise in the area of healthy eating with a focus on helping people to increase their daily intake of fruits and vegetables. Doing that for the last 27 years. How many employees? Me. Then he goes on to say, this is where it's really interesting, ladies and gentlemen. I was working as an accountant, then I opened 2 record stores. I'd borrowed from the bank to finance the shops, which were proving not to be very profitable, and I was struggling to make the payments. By chance, I came across a business in 1993 that changed my career path. However, my life changed forever when my wife died in 2015. I began to understand the meaning of life and what was really important. And along with my family, and Cathy is Eddy's wife, Cathy O'Shaughnessy Creche in Calcutta. Calcutta was born, which caters for slum children aged from 2 to 6 years. Absolutely outstanding and amazing and sad all at once. And indeed, it's lovely to have you here. Thank you for joining us, Eddy. So Eddy, in your own words, before we go to India, because that's going to form a significant part of our conversation today. Before we go there, would you take us all the way back? There was talk about a milk cart back in the day. Take us back to those early years in Charleville, please.
Yeah, great. I was just thinking about this before the interview today. My earliest memory is when I was 4. It's connected to the milk carts now. So I remember when I was 4, my father, like a lot of Irish men at the time, this would be back in the 50s, he'd emigrated to London to get work and he was sending money home, and that was kind of pretty much an Irish thing. But he'd been sending money home to my mother, and I remember eventually she had enough put together to buy a house. So they bought a cottage, which is the cottage we were all reared in subsequently. But my earliest memory was at the age of 4, when myself and my mother, because I hadn't started school yet at that point. So we went back to the cottage, which is about a mile outside the town here. And my mother just started to get the place ready, but that's obviously where we were all reared. But from there, I remember we'd no light, we'd no running water, we'd an outside toilet. I used to have to go back. My jobs, I had a lot of jobs, I noticed when I actually think back. I seem to have most of the jobs, but one of the jobs I had was to get water. So there was a pump. I don't know if any of you would be old enough to remember this in rural Ireland, but there was a pump, maybe about 300 or 400 yards back the road. So every day I would go back with 2 buckets. I had to have 2 to balance, because if you had one, you were kind of going to go lopsided. But one thing, and actually I still to this day, it's one of the best lessons I've learned in life, and it's probably about business, but it's about lots of things. In the pump itself, like the pump would be kind of taller than myself, but the handle of the pump had a big round metal end to it, which gave a bit of weight, so you could actually, it just made it a bit easier to pump. But you'd be pumping and pumping and pumping, and there was no water coming out. But I learned the lesson that if you kept pumping and pumping and pumping, eventually the water came out, and once it started to come out, it was a lot easier. You could actually go easier then. You didn't have to pump as often, or you didn't have to pump as hard. And that's something I've learned, especially in business, where like you have to do the groundwork, you have to pump hard, but once it starts and it keeps flowing, it's just that bit easier to keep it going, but you have to be willing to put the work in at the start. But that was one lesson I learned very early in life. But to go back to the milking the cows bit, when I was about maybe 13 or 14, maybe younger even, I started working with a local farmer. I used to go back to him in the summer, and I used to go back to him at the weekends. And one of my many jobs there was milking. I used to milk the cows. Now, I didn't milk them all. He was milking, both of us were milking them, but I used to take, with 4 churns, milk churns, and I take them into the creamery, which I loved doing. I just adored. That was brilliant. So we'd saddle up the horse and cart, and I'd take the 4 churns into the creamery. It was a brilliant time. It was a really fantastic time. You know, I mean, it's part of growing up, I suppose, really, especially in rural Ireland. So yeah, that's kind of the background to that story.
And Eddie, that's just wonderful. I saw the Bula bus coming on there. Quite amazing that you can look back. Clearly, you look back with very fond memories. And by the way, I love the fact that everywhere you went was back. We went 300 yards back the road was the pump, and we went back to the creamery and back to the field, and everywhere you go is back. It's a lovely phrase. Love the 2 buckets for balance idea. Great, brilliant analogy. You know, it makes perfect sense. You'd be lopsided with one, so we bring balance into our lives. And then the pump analogy, trying to get something going like a water pump. It's exactly the same for a business or any venture that's worthwhile. But you got to put in the hard yards for a period of time before any sign of something happens. Tell us, why did you particularly enjoy taking the 4 churns to the creamery? What was that? What was it about that you particularly enjoyed?
Well, it was like in those days, life obviously it was a lot simpler. But I because I had milked the cows myself, I was taking the milk in, and you had to queue in then, and there was some guys, the bigger farmers had tractors, but we didn't have, we just had the horse and cart, like lots of guys. But I used to get to meet everyone in there, so you get all the news in the area. I used to pick up butter because they used to make butter there, and you would get butter which would be put on the account. And one thing I used to have to get was hot boiled water, because the farmer that I worked with, Ted, he'd know hot water to clean the milking system. So what we used to do is I'd fill the 4 churns with cold water, and then they had a steam pump which we'd put in, and it would boil the water. So when I'd be going home, especially on a cold day, I'd have the hot water at my back going home. But also I used to get to go into the forge. There was a guy locally who had a forge who used to shoe the horses, so I used to bring the horse into him as well. So like, they were amazing people, like fantastic people and real hard workers. Like, and you know, I learned a lot there, and I learned the importance of working hard, which, like, the reason I ended up working there was my father used to do jobs on the side. He used to do bits of building work and walls and putting down floors for the farmer, and that's how I ended up working there. So like, the whole idea of having to work hard, being normal, that's kind of where I learned all that, you know.
Isn't it just lovely? It's just lovely. And you're speaking a lot about connection there. You're speaking, you know, I assume that's where you're going to go, that it was the enjoyment of going in and meeting all the fellas and having the chat. We spoke with us several times on the show here about forecourts and village shops being the place where the groups would cluster. You have the farmers over here, and you have the ladies over here, and you have the kids over here. But it's all about connection. And that's one of the things that we've all been challenged with because of COVID. This sort of changed connection piece. It's very strange here in Ireland to be walking down the street and literally step to one side to let somebody pass. I mean, that's just unheard of for us as a race. So please God, over time that will all change, and we go back to the way things were in some shape or form, and only the good stuff may come back. Love the hot water story. That's just brilliant. You know, you painted a great picture there of the way life really was, hard work, and you got nothing for nothing. Great. Move on to your career as an accountant, a record store owner and a franchise owner, please.
Yeah, so most of those things came by chance, really. Definitely it wasn't a big plan that I had laid out in advance. So I had started working for a summer in the local cheese factory. So I think I did 3 summers there. But again, brilliant time, great people, amazing people, like great crack, great buzz to it. And obviously you're starting to make some money then, and at that age, you know, I was working with a group of fellas my own age. I remember actually the day we did the leaving, we had to get time off work to go up to the school to get our leaving results, but it was a gang of us together. It was a great buzz to the whole thing. But from there, that company had set up a trainee accountant scheme, and I applied for that. My mother told me I should, so I did, and for one, good or bad, I don't know, but I ended up there, and that's where I started on that journey. But what happened was, I had a great love for, I've always had and still have, for music. And along with a friend of mine, it was actually the Bruce Springsteen album, Born in the USA, that particular album, that was the beginning of it, where you couldn't buy it locally. And it was a huge album. It was like a very successful album. And we said, you know, maybe we should do something about this. Maybe we should make it available. So, you know, we spoke to the banks, give them some rigmarole of a story that they bought, and they gave us a few bob, and we went off to Dublin, we met DJs and we met all these amazing people, we met record companies. It was like Hollywood to us, like, and we bought a load of stock and we came back down and we got the ball rolling. But like, it was one of those things that you do because you love it, but it's not a good business decision. So even though I loved it, like, I mean, we started selling LPs, then we went on to CDs, or cassettes first, we sold a lot of cassettes. And then we went on to the CDs. We were doing T-shirts, we were doing bullet belts, we were doing studs, we were doing these cowboy bootless ties, they were called. Brilliant gear. And we'd punks coming in, we'd heavy metal guys coming in, we'd country and western people coming in, everyone. Like, we had this notion that we had this, what was the saying we had? We were small enough to care and big enough to count. We use that as a slogan because we were small, like. But we put a lot of effort into where we got a lot of business was people would come in and they'd look for some classical album from about 200 years ago, or some country and Tex-Mex American stuff that I'd never heard of, or they'd look for some rare punk album. But we had like loads and loads and loads of catalogues, and I'd spend all day Saturday going through the catalogues to find those particular artists. And we'd order them and we'd get them in, and no other shop would do that for them in the city. People just wouldn't be bothered, they couldn't care less. So we got a bit of a name for that. So I loved that time, but unfortunately financially it wasn't very viable, and it just was getting worse and worse and worse. So I'd always been dabbling and looking at business ideas, and I'd looking at import export, and I'd looking at loads of things, and people knew, I suppose, that I was kind of open to looking at stuff. So very much by chance, the business that I'm in now just came across my lap. It was just one of those things, really. Actually, I'll just tell the story how it did happen. I haven't told the story for years, but it was a Saturday and it was raining in Charleville, as it does a lot of the time. But Cathy was downtown doing shopping, and she was walking down the street, and her first cousin was driving in the opposite direction, and he rolled down the window. At the time we did the shop open, this guy had a band along with a few of his friends, and at the same time you two had just started, and they were very, very beginning to get successful. But I had a guy, their manager, whose name escapes me now at the moment, but he was kind of seen as being the key figure in the success of the band. He just basically pulled all the strings and got him going. McGuinness, yeah, wasn't it? Yeah, that was his name. So James, he rolled down the window and he was shouting out in the rain, in the traffic to Cathy. Well, he wanted to meet me, he had a business idea. So she came home and said, James, he wants to call up this evening. He has this business idea. And through all of that, I interpreted that as being he wanted me to become the manager of the band. That was my interpretation of what he had said, even though it turned out that it wasn't what he had said. But when he came, I just assumed I was going to be the next band manager. I was going to take the boys on tour, and it was going to be brilliant because I didn't play or I didn't sing, but I could do that bit and the boys could do their bit. So that turned out to be the business that I have ever since, which is a long way from U2 and a long way from music and bands. But that's how I kind of started, so very much by accident. But
I love it. Boolabus. And am I right in saying the McGuinness fella you're talking about is the manager of U2?
Correct, yeah. That's who I saw myself. I saw myself as being him with the lads. They were doing the music. I was doing the business end of it. That was my plan. And you two never bought into that? That's a shame. My goodness. Look,
anyway, and you know what? If they had, they could have been big. They could have been big.
They could have made it. Who knows?
Eddy, that's a great story. That's a great story. Eddy, my friend, you mentioned Cathy. When did you meet? How did you meet?
Actually, we were working in the same job. So that's how we met. The first time we met was actually this. They used to have socials in those days. All the factories, all the business, the bigger businesses used to have an annual Christmas social. That's where we met, and it kind of, it was one of those things that it was destined to happen. So we were together for about 40 years. Like we started as, like, Cathy was 20, I was 21, and so we kind of grew up together when we were getting old together, I suppose, a bit, yeah.
Yeah, sorry to bring you here, but it's a significant part of the story. And Gemma, you're very welcome. Gemma's Eddy and Cathy's daughter here in the cafe. You're very welcome. Thank you for being here. You know, Eddie and I met years ago, and then we sort of went our separate ways as happens, but we sort of stayed in touch, you know, periodically. And then when we reconnected and I realised what had happened, I was devastated. Nothing compared to what happened in Eddie's life. So Eddie, if you're comfortable, will you bring us through what happened and that year that, you know, you stepped off the world for a year by your own admission, and then where it led, please, Eddie.
Yeah, so probably it was 2 years really, because from diagnosis to, well, what happened was it was about like 14 months. So Cathy was in and out of hospital for about 14 months from diagnosis to the funeral, let's say. So I kind of switched off for that time. No, of a normal day, I'd spend the whole day in the hospital. Now, I was lucky that the business I have and the business I had then we'll say allowed me to do that, because it's a bit like the pump that I spoke about at the beginning. I'd done a lot of pumping early on in my business career. I did a lot of work, and when I needed to take time out, water just kept coming out. So it just worked for me really. I was lucky. I was very, very lucky, and that's it. So of a normal day, I'd spend the whole day originally in Mallow Hospital and then ultimately in the Mercy Hospital in Cork, and I'd spend all day there. But I went on for 14 months, and then after the funeral, I just found it hard to get my head around it, obviously, and so it took about a year before I could kind of get out of the house, really. You know, to be honest, it was just a bit of a very dark time in my life, obviously, you know.
Yeah, it is obvious. None of us have been there, so none of us can sympathise or empathise properly with you, except to say heartfelt condolences to you and your family for what you all have had to go through. You shared with me, however, that one day you saw something somewhere about a meeting that was happening down in the Photo Island Hotel, and you decided to step out and go there, and you did so because you'd be somewhat incognito. Will you take us through that evening, if you wouldn't mind, please?
Yeah, so I was on LinkedIn actually, and as I say, I hadn't kind of left the house really far to go to the supermarket, which was a nightmare in itself because I never had to go to shop. I never went into shop in my life. I never bought a stitch of clothes. I never bought food. I didn't do shopping like. But anyway, so I was on LinkedIn and I was scrolling and I was just killing time really. I was just doodling. But I realised that I needed to get out of the house, and I didn't want to get out locally. I didn't want to go anywhere I'd been known where start the whole conversation all over again. So I saw this flyer advertising a talk in Cork, in Fort Island Resort Hotel, and it was a guy who was like an adventurer. He was going to tell his story. It sounded interesting, though, like sounded like a guy who had a story to tell. And I said I'd go because it was over an hour away. So at least if I only drove there and back, it would be 2 hours out of the house. And I said, look, nobody knows me. I'll go in the door. I'll sit somewhere near the door so that if I need to get out, I can just get out without making a big fuss. So I went to it, and it turned out to be a fundraiser for an organisation called the Hope Foundation. So it was 20 euro in the door, in the ticket, and seemed to me like that'd be a night out, get out of the house. That was the plan. So what I saw then, I suppose, really, so this guy tells his story, and it was interesting now, but when he finished, this lady was introduced by the host, and it turned out to be a lady called Maureen Forrest, who's the founder of the Hope Foundation. So Maureen went up and she thanked the speaker because it was a freebie from him, like, because he was he did a lot of work for the Hope Foundation, and so he flew over from England to do the talk. And she thanked everyone for coming, and she said, look, you've all paid 20 euro on the door. I just want to show you for the next couple of minutes where the money actually goes. And she put on a video for a couple of minutes. And so what I saw really changed everything and changed my way of thinking, which was a good thing. And it just shook me up, changed my life really. So what she showed was like, there was this like, kind of like a mountain. And you could see these little black dots on the mountain, and then it focuses or it zooms in a bit. And you could see the dots taking shape, and they were like crouched over. When they went in further again, then you could see that there was two different things happening. There was pigs, there was these black pig, really big black pigs. And I was going to say I met him after, but didn't actually meet him. I saw him afterwards. And the other thing was children. So there was these 4 or 5-year-old children who were bent over. So the pig and the child had the same shape because they were both bent over, obviously. The pigs were looking for food and the children were picking plastic. So they were picking plastic and were putting into these massive big sacks and bringing them back down again. So she went on to explain that it's Bagger Dump, which is one of the things, the biggest dump outside Calcutta, which subsequently, Gemma and myself actually went there subsequently, but every morning something like 19 trucks land into Bagger Dump and tip, and as soon as the trucks come, all the children would arrive. The parents would send them up on the dump, and themselves and the pigs would be on the dump all day. They'd be picking the plastic. They'd come down and they'd sell that then for a couple of pence, which was what was going to feed them for the day. They were sleeping on the street, so they'd go back down when they were finished. They'd sleep in the street, to get up in the morning and do the whole thing all over again. And she explained that when she had seen this herself, that she didn't think that was anywhere for a child to live. And she really explained and showed me in particular, like what was going on in that part of the world. And it was just from watching that I mean, I went in the door feeling really sorry for myself and really down and really like, oh, what's it all about and where's my life after disappearing all of a sudden. And I left the room thinking, there's people actually out there worse than I am. These kids have no hope, like. And I said, it's about time I stopped feeling sorry for myself and maybe we should do something. So on the way back, I phoned the lads, my family on the way back, and I said, look, I'm looking at this thing. Maybe we should do something like in your mother's name. Maybe we should do something. Maybe we could make a difference to these children because nobody deserves to live like the way they live, like, you know.
Eddy O'Shaughnessy, Gemma O'Shaughnessy. Yeah. Sorry. Tough stuff, that brought you to that moment. And the fact that you could walk in there feeling sorry for yourself and walk out feeling sorrier for people on the other side of the world is just phenomenal. So hats off to you all. So the conversation happened on the phone on the way back, and how quickly thereafter were you landed in India? What was that first experience like for you, Eddy, please?
Well, the first time we went over, Gemma and myself went on the first trip. But India, like, a lot of people talk about India and it's amazing. That's fantastic. I've never seen that side of India because I've only ever seen the slums. That's all I've ever seen. So someday maybe, who knows, I might end up seeing the other side of India. But so we landed in India and we stood in actually we ended up in that dump, Bagger Dump, and 2 photos I sent you, Colm, the one with myself and Gemma and the sign that was taken in Bagger Creche, which is so today all those children have come off. There's no child now up on that dump. They've all come off. They're all in the creches and the schools as a result, and that's thanks to Maureen Forrest and the Hope Foundation. But we stood in the middle of all that, and it's like I remember actually the key point was that when so I spoke to my own lads and I said, look, we need to do something about this thing and maybe we should wouldn't it be nice if we could do something like in Cathy's name, like. And so I discovered that there was the Hope Foundation people had so I said, what I'll do is I'll talk to these guys in the Hope Foundation. I'll figure out kind of what they've done. I'll go over and I'll build something and I'll do something, and I had fierce notions I was going to do the devil and all, like. But when I met the Hope Foundation, they started to explain to me about what they did. And they kept saying to me, like, you should come over sometime. We go over, like, every year we take groups over. Would you not come over? And like in one conversation, they might have said it 20 times. Did you ever think of going over? Why don't you come over with us? It'd be great if you could come over with us. Any which way they could change to say the same thing. They kept saying it to me, and I could say, why did they keep saying that? But then the day I stood in the middle of it, I realised why. Because it's when you stand in the middle of any of the slum areas or with the street people, or in Bagger Dump, when you stand there, you can never forget what you've seen. Like, it's one of those situations when you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Like, so when we got there, like, we saw like really how bad it was, and so I suppose the best thing we ever did was we decided that rather than trying to do a solo run, that we would literally link up with the Hub Foundation and see if we could do something in conjunction with them, you know.
And as a result, Cathy O'Shaughnessy Creches have been born in Calcutta.
Yeah.
How many children have you, through your work with Hope and Cathy O'Shaughnessy, how many children have you managed to take off the streets?
Well, we started in a place called Nabawasha, because in the ideal world, what we wanted to have a creche with Cathy's name, and that was the original idea, but took us a bit of time to get that organised. So what we said, and they encouraged us, they kind of said, why don't you dip your feet in and just do a bit and see and get used to it and all this. So we started off with a place called Nabawasha, a children's home there. So I put some money in, and the company I work with, the Just Plus company, put in, they match funded me. So we got 14 grand put together, and we went over then to see Nabawasha. That's where we put the original, and there was 52 children in there. But from there, then that was only a kind of a one-off kind of a thing. They were short money for that project. We had the money, so we put it in. But then we got into a place called Pension and Tala. Yeah, that photograph actually is in Bagger, that Bagger Creche, which is those lads, those two guys there would have been on the dump. They would have been some of the many children picking the plastic. So we got involved with Pension and Tala Creche, which has 48 children. But then what we really wanted happened the following year, and I visited a place called Chitpur. Now Chitpur, that's Chitpur, and those children are amazing, and all the people that we met, just to explain, there's something like 3,000 slums in Calcutta. Now, one of the many things I've learned over there's two types of slums. There's official slums and there's unofficial slums. So if you live in an official slum, for every 25 families, there's one tap, one toilet, and one power plug point for every 25 families. That's the official slum. If you live in an unofficial slum, there's zero, nothing, nada, nothing. And that's where these guys live. There's a river beside it, and it's black. I mean, it stinks. Like the temperatures now are always going to be 30. It's all 30 plus. Like it's very warm, and the stink off of that river, and the flies and the filth, and just beside the river, then they took us into this it was like this alleyway. You're going into all these little runs, all these little alleys, and they're just about. Like maybe two people could pass, maybe just about, they're that narrow. But these guys then would live in so there's canvas and bit of tin and plastic structures that all these lads would live in. And as it turns out, there's 120 families in that community in this place called Chitpur. And I went in there, and as you can see, the conditions weren't great. So since that photograph was taken, that building was kind of a mud hut kind of a thing with bits of tarpaulin and all that. So we kind of leveled that, and we've rebuilt it from the ground. It's now concrete, proper roofing. We've decorated all the floors, actually all matting and all that, and all the walls there that you can see that's all gone, and it's all been decorated, and there's like cartoony figures and all that for the kids. Like there's 45 children go in there. They're aged 2.5 to 6. So the whole idea really, and what we wanted to do, and what we'd like to think we're on the road to achieving, is the biggest issue is those lads there are unofficial. They're not now, but they would have been. They didn't exist. They're Bangladeshi people. They would have walked from Bangladesh all the way into Calcutta because they had nothing to eat, and what they have in Chitpur is zero. So, and they came from Bangladesh where they had less. So you can imagine how bad that was. But
Eddy, it's an incredibly heart-rending story. You might come back into the cafe there if you wouldn't mind. Thanks, Emma, for sharing those pictures. And there's yourself and Gemma. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Eamon. Thank you indeed. Eddy, yeah, Sarah Ward started the Buddha bus there. Heartbreaking. Yet in Cathy's memory, yourself and your family are doing some tremendous work, unbelievably good work. You started talking about those alleys that you came across in Chitpur, and you were talking about families living in tarpaulin and tin and all this stuff. You mentioned when we were chatting before the show, and this came up very recently, we had Paddy O'Connor on recently in the show, who runs a charity for girls out in rescuing girls out in Africa and Kenya. And but the two of you touched on the same point, which is around education. And you explained to me the state of things, and then you explained about how the children go to school. Can you touch on that for a sec?
Yeah, so what happens is, Gemma and myself went, this is kind of what we learned, is the education is the key. They told us over there that if a child is educated to like a primary level here in Ireland, they're 99.99% guaranteed that they work, they'll have a career, they'll have a life, they'll have a family, they'll have money, they'll have a house, they'll have everything if they're educated. But the kids who are in these slums and the street people they're undocumented, they don't exist, officially they don't exist. Now, because they don't exist, they can't use the state hospitals, the doctors, they can't use the state school, they can't use any state functions because they don't exist. So what we've been doing is that all the kids now who go to the Chitpur Creche, they're all documented, they're registered, their families are registered, and because of that, so they start with us at 2.5 and they go to 6 years of age. But what happens after then is from 6, they're now eligible to go into the state school, and they're in the educational system. Like we met, Jim and myself actually met, we were in another slum one of the days, and we were going through it, and it's awful and it's bad and it's terrible. And then we got to this building, and the guy that was taking us around said, I'm to introduce you to this girl. And there was a sign up on the wall, and it was in Indian, so I don't know what it said. So he knocked on the door and this girl came out. Now, it says she may be late 20s, early 30s. But he went on to explain that this girl had come from the slum that we were in. She was a child in that slum. She had gone to the Hope Foundation program, started with them, went all the way through. They funded her through college. She qualified out as a solicitor. She went back into the creche or into the slum, and she has a practice in there now serving her community. And that's really what caught our eye, that you could actually do. Imagine the two extremes there, like. And our vision always from the beginning was to, we could see that we can put over the years, we'll put a few hundred people through the Cathy O'Shaughnessy Creche just because of the numbers. But our vision is that at least one of those someday will end up somewhere in Europe or America or somewhere with a fully qualified degree. They'll be good at something, they'll make a difference in the world at something, and they can look back to the day they started in the Cathy O'Shaughnessy Creche and to see that gave them the first leg up, because that's what we want to just do, is just give them the first leg up. Like once we think that's all they need over there, they just need the first bit of help, and everything else they'll take care of themselves, you know.
And dare I say it, Cathy O'Shaughnessy is giving them that through yourself and Gemma and your family. So, you know, wonderful, wonderful. Because without that, as you say, they on the pathway to nothing. One last story I'm going to ask you to tell, if you wouldn't mind, and that's to do with the people who live on the street outside that railway station along that wall. Would you mind? And the ambulance, the evening yourself and Gemma went in the ambulance, please.
Yeah, so the Hope Foundation, they also have a hospital, because I remember the street people and the slum people can't use the state hospital, so they use the Hope Foundation hospital. But every night there are 2 ambulances, and every night the 2 ambulances go out and what they call the night run. So they asked us, when we were over, do you want to go out on the night run? Yeah, sure, whatever, why not? So we jumped into myself and Gemma, their ambulances are small, like, so we jumped into the back, tidy enough now in the back of the ambulance. But so they started touring all the different, like, so what happens, they go to each community every second night, so the people know they're on the way, like. So literally when the ambulances pull up, the queue would form. So there's a doctor at the back door, and he examines them and sees what's wrong with them. He writes out a prescription. He gives it, then there's like a side hatch, like a chipper type of a setup. The side hatch, and there's a nurse there, and she gives them the tablets and whatever they need, the medications and all that. So we were doing all this, and one of the places they took us to was the train station. So the train station they took us to is one of the it's the biggest in Calcutta. There's 2 million people a day go through it. It's a 24-hour job. Huge, massive building, like as you can imagine, must be, it's a massive, huge building. So I'm standing there, and in the front there's a big, like a concrete area where I'm sure people drop off people and collect people and all that. It's big kind of car parky type place. But there's about 300 families live there on the ground. So they've got a mat about the length of yourself. So if there's one person, they've got this one mat and they've a blanket over them. That's it. If it's 2 people, they've got 2 mats and 2 blankets. That's it. But there's about 300 people, 300 families live there, and they're in lines. They're all perfectly shaped in lines across. So I'm standing there talking to one of the doctors out of the ambulance, and I look over towards the wall of the train station, and there's this kind of a browny shimmery thing going on. So there's like a grid. I imagine that it was I think it might have been looked like it could have been a flower bed at some point, and there was a railing kind of guarding it type of thing. So it's about maybe that wide, running along the strip of the wall. But there's all this brown shimmery thing, and I said, Gemma, what's the brown shimmery? And he said, oh, they're rats. All right. So like, could have been thousands of them, like, because it's a very long wall, like, and they're going up and down through the where the earth would have been for what I imagine was the flower bed. So whatever look I gave, so there was it was like a bit of a tato or something, I don't know what it was, and it was like about 3 or 4 foot away from me. And this guy this rat runs out, grabs the thing and legs it back in again, and then he passed out, like, so I said, man, see that? He didn't even see it, like. So I said, would they ever bite, like, because you've all these people and they're on the ground. I said, yeah, that's common enough, he said, to get a bite from a rat. Like, actually, he said, we were here 2 nights ago, and there's a family over there. So they had this baby, and they had fallen asleep, and the baby was on the ground, and 3 or 4 rats came over, and they ate the nose off the baby. So then we came on with the ambulance, he said, and they gave us, and we took the child off. But that's life, that's normal, that's life, everyday life. That's life in the slums of Calcutta. I'll tell you one other, actually, I didn't tell you this, Colm, the last, it was one other story which always resonates with me, is we went to this, there's a special needs school that they have as well for kids from the slums and the street people with special needs kids. And there was this little girl there, her name is Ria, and she's disfigured, and she has no legs, and she's very badly disfigured. So she's probably about 8 or 9 now today. But she was found, so when she was born, so over there, if you have a child and it's a boy, you have no money, it's a struggle, but at least a boy, you can put him to work. If you have a girl, you're not very interested. If you have a child with special needs, you're definitely not interested, because it's a drain on the family, like. And a lot of the girls ended up being trafficked and going into prostitution and being sold. But that's very common over there. But this little girl was born with special needs, and she's totally disfigured, badly disfigured. So they put her into a plastic bag. This is the mother and father, right? Put her into a plastic bag. They go to the train station, put the bag onto the train, and the train takes off, because they thought that was all they could do. As it turned out, the guard on the train, the guy going up and down, saw the bag moving, and obviously discovered there was a child. And so that child ended up anyway with the Hub Foundation, and she's the last. I was over there now the last day, and she's Ria, is her name. She's the biggest smile you could ever meet. She loves meeting people. She's a dote, like, she'd be mad to be meeting her, like. But that's life over there, like, and you know, it's just so far removed from what we're used to.
Yeah, one of the Eddy stories are unbelievable, and they quite literally are unbelievable. Yeah, Bridget, thank you for that. Heartbreaking, but unbelievable. And we've no sense of it. We've absolutely, you know, you said yourself, the Hope Foundation people kept saying, you should come over, you should come over, you should come over, because they knew once you got over there, you couldn't, as you said earlier, you can never unsee it. And the question is, can you walk away and, you know, hang your head and pretend you didn't see it? Obviously, you didn't do that yourself and Gemma and your family. You're making a huge difference. 100-year work, by the way. That's what this is. It's 100-year work. You'll never. It's the pumping. We're back to the pump. It's charitable, right? You're pumping and pumping and pumping, and 100 years from now, that pump will still be flowing. So well done, you and Gemma and everybody else in the family. Yeah, thank you, Princess Shetty. Ria, you mentioned as well that these people have nothing, and I think the phrase you used was they like nothing, right? And they'd zero when they came from Bangladesh to Calcutta, but they'd less than zero back there. So this was a step up, and yet they still have nothing. And yet you said they're incredibly happy people.
Yeah, they're amazing. Like they're the happiest. They're full of gratitude. Like you meet them literally, and they're in the middle of a slum, and they're smiling. They're delighted to see you. They're so humble. They're so grateful. They're like, it reminds me. I was in one of the many days in the Mercy Hospital. So I go in early in the morning. So some days Cathy would sleep a lot, like, so I go out and I get some tea or whatever. I go for a ramble around the city. But I was coming back one day, and any of you that might be familiar with, so the Mercy Hospital is in the middle of Cork City, so it's on the street. So it's not like a big drive into it or anything like that. It's on the street, so there's loads of people around it. But I was coming back one day, and things weren't going well now, but I just came up to the door, and there was 3 or 4 women standing at the door chatting, and they were giving out about the rain, they were giving out about the traffic, and with everything that I was going through inside, and everybody else in the hospital was in the same boat as me, like, I think, like, why do we give out about stupid stuff, like? And then you go to Calcutta and you see what's going on there, and you come back and you have people whinging about they need a new iPhone, or they want something, bit of Nike gear or whatever, like. And I know you can't say people shouldn't have that type of stuff either, but stuff is relative, like, and like where we've gone so far from where we were, because I remember growing up as a kid, we had nothing, like, we didn't have electricity, we didn't have water, etc., and now we're like, I'm giving out about Wi-Fi and I'm giving out about God knows what, but like the people in Calcutta who have nothing are the happiest people I've ever met in my life, really, yeah.
Wow, incredible. Eddy, thank you for honouring us today by coming in and honouring Cathy's memory by coming in today and sharing her story, her journey and your story. And I suppose the question that needs to be asked is, what can we do to help? How can we help? I know Eamon has put in Cathy's hopefund.ie into the chat box there. So people, if you feel the urge or the need to support the great work that's going on out there, you know how to go about that. But is there anything else we could do, Eddy, to help with what's going on?
Just one thing to mention, and I know there's huge talk of COVID, obviously, these days, and it's all COVID. But over there, COVID isn't the problem. So what's happened over there is, most countries have this lockdown scenario going on. So the people in the slums are basically locked into the slums. They're not allowed to come out. I've seen footage where the police have these long bamboo sticks, and they're beaten. So they come out of the slum and they literally beat them back into the slum again. Because of the lockdown, that's how they deal with the scenario. But the problem is that these people are what they call day workers. So they work by day, they get paid in cash. They make it the equivalent about €4 a day. But if they don't work, they don't eat, bottom line. And they haven't been working since the epidemic or the pandemic even started. So so what happened with us is our creche obviously closed because of the virus. But what we've been doing since we've switched over to, there's about 120 families in Chitpur, in that community, who use the creche. So we've been feeding them since March. So we feed them, we have these food parcels that we get distributed to them. So we fed them in March, April, May. We had the most recent drop was there 2 or 3 days ago. We had another drop. So they get like potatoes and rice and a thing called dal, which is common enough over there, and spices and all that. They're not going to get fat on it, but it's just going to keep them alive. But over there, hunger is the issue. It's not COVID. They couldn't care less about COVID. they just want to stay alive. They want food. And what on top of all that, then what happened was about 3 weeks ago, a cyclone came into the Bay of Bengal and hit Calcutta. So these communities are literally made up of tarpaulin and bits of canvas and bits of plastic, and a cyclone comes in and it just fires it all up in the air, and God knows where it'll end up. So they had to contend with that as well, and there was a lot of flooding as well as a result of the cyclone. So while we're worried about social distancing and washing your hands and all the stuff, which is all correct, of course, and proper, these people are trying to stay alive. They need food to live. So we've been feeding the Chitpur community for those couple of months. So yeah, like the website, I think Eamon has put it in there. So obviously we'd be delighted. And one thing I can tell you, and like over there, right, a new iPhone would feed the whole slum in Chitpur for months and months and months and months. Like small money goes a long way over there. So every euro that goes in there makes a difference. Like €4 a day feeds a family. So you can imagine, like we think nothing about the price of a pint kind of a thing, you know, but for them it's enough food to keep them going. Like, so any help anyone can give is brilliant. And once the pandemic's over now, we'll be back in our kind of normal fundraising. We've been very lucky that some of the people we know have helped us. We've run personal development seminars. We've run shows in the theatre locally. We've had the RAN, you know, Stevens' Day. We've got boxing tournaments. We've had all different people come to us with ideas. So we're always looking for ideas. If you know, think of anything that's novel as a fundraising idea, that'd be brilliant too. Like, so yeah, any help, of course, would be appreciated.
Great stuff, Eddie. We wish you continued success with your wonderful work. I wanted to ask that question, actually. You're delighted to raise money. We're going to go to comment or Q&A from the floor in just a moment, if that's okay. But I wanted to ask you the question about, how much would it take, let's say somebody wants to donate to Cathy's Hope Fund, how much would it take to take one child off the street or off the dump and bring them through your creche? Have you a number for that? Yeah,
it would take, I think it's something like €120. Actually, initially this minute, €20 will feed a family for a month. So okay. They won't get fat, but it'll keep them alive for a month.
All right, my friend.
Relatively small money makes a huge difference over there. Like.
Yeah. Well, it's you guys that are making the huge difference. Yeah, well done. Thanks for coming in and being so honest. It can't be easy. So I really appreciate you taking the time out to do so. And as I said, Gemma, you're more than welcome. Lovely to have you here in the cafe, and your dad's doing you proud. Listen, I'd love to open it up to comment or Q&A from the floor. Who would like to come in and say something to Eddie? Thank you, Bridget.
Hi, Eddie. It's a very poignant, very powerful story. It really knocks the stuffing out of you. So it's actually very hard to ask any questions because you've said it all so intrinsically clearly, how horrific it is. It really wakes you up. There's no doubt about it. It's, you know, you're a fantastic man. But I can see that, you know, what I was saying, and Colm was saying earlier on, your childhood really sets the stage. There's no doubt about it. I mean, your childhood with the pumps and bringing the milk to the creamery, that's where you saw. I always say that without poverty, we wouldn't have resilience or stories or, you know, like ideas. Poverty, including my own family, poverty makes you stronger and makes you very alert to what's going on. And I think that childhood set you up to do it on this mission. And your late wife completely spurred it on, of course. And I just think, keep going. We'll all try and support you as best we can. If I can do a fundraiser or something, I'll definitely try it. I'll try and organise it here in the cottage. Maybe when our Limerick contingent come down, I'm just thinking there now, we were going to meet up in Dalkey in the cottage. I know it's a long way, but we might get a long way can make a bit of hay. But we might work on that and think about it and make the get together a fundraiser. And I think that, you know, it's only small help, but as you say, every bit helps.
Bridget, thank you for that. No. Eddie, respond to Bridget?
Yeah, absolutely. But you're right. But I think like maybe one thing I would say is what I learned over there, and it goes back to what you said, Bridget. Like it's like what's important in life. You know, I was kind of driven business-wise, financially, whatever. But then I learned what's the most important in life is to be happy. That's what I learned. And if you can impact somebody else's life for the better, I think if you can do those two things, I think you can say that your life is a success. At least for me, anyway. That's kind of what it's about. And it like being over there is humbling, and realizing that you can actually make a difference. I mean, I never would have thought I could have made a difference. And I see Gemma's on the call here now as well. And like our family, like we did it because of what happened to us. But I mean, it's a blessing, and it's something that really just changed, and not changed my life, and how I think about things and what's important and what's not important. And I think that's a lesson. And I know, Colm, on the show, you talk about coming out of COVID and all that, but I think like COVID, if anything, taught us about connection, and it taught us about what's important and what's not important, jumping into the traffic and fighting traffic every day. How important is that maybe? And maybe just talking to somebody and giving your elderly next door neighbour a bit of food or baking them a cake or something probably is a lot more important than a lot of things we do in life. And I think we all have lessons to learn out of COVID, not mind, out of what has happened to us as a family. You know?
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Well said. Bridget, thank you for that lovely offer, and I will take you up on that for sure. And Eddie, thank you for that lovely response. Gemma, you've turned on your video. May I invite you in to say a quick hello?
Sure. Hi.
Are you proud of the daddy?
Oh yeah. Well, he works really hard at everything he does. We've put an awful lot of work into the project at the Hope Foundation, but it is really paying off. The whole thing is really overwhelming when you go there, and it's very it's so overwhelming that I probably thought at the time, I did think at the time, I can't fix this. This is too big a problem. Like, where are the Indian government in this, and why is this happening? And this isn't something I can fix. It's too big. There's too many people. There's millions. But Charlotte, who works for the Hope Foundation, said to me at the time, you can't fix it, and no one person can. But that's why nobody tries, because it is too big. But if you can just do your bit, just take a little slice of it. And the generational impact of what's happening now is enormous. Like, so if you take 48 kids in one creche, but it's their future, but it's their family's future, and it's their children's future. And where that goes from there, it's a little seed, but it's planting something that could actually be quite huge and have a really big impact in the long term. So I have to try and not think about the whole thing, because I have a tendency to want to do everything and make it all perfect, and you can't make it perfect. And you know, it's on everybody to make their own way. Like Daddy was saying, it's a start, like, and once you get a start, you can kind of make anything happen from that. Although his first idea, I have to say, was he walked into the house after that, after going to photo that day, and said, right, we're building a school in India and we're going to get them broadband. And I was like, I don't know how to do any of that. Like, what are you talking about? That was the first idea. But it was the idea of like a child in Ireland, in the absolute worst possible circumstances, there are supports, you know, and there is a chance. But a child born on the streets in India has absolutely no possibility of bettering their circumstances for them or for any future generations. The gap is just way too enormous. And with the undocumented, they don't even have access to the food stamps at the moment, like we were saying. So they have no chance, there's no possibility of it. So it's to create the possibility and enable people and empower people to change their circumstances. So it's...
Gemma, well done, well done. Well done you. Eddie, you've got a good one there, that's for sure. Great one. Gemma, that was just gorgeous. Thank you for that. And delighted you came in, because earlier, I'm going to share this now. I asked her, would she like to come in? And she said, no, he'll be fine. Right?
Oh, leave him talk.
When I saw the video going on, I said, that's my cue. Listen, it's wonderful work. I love this notion that you give them a start. Love the notion that you've already picked up on the fact that it is 100-year work. You're going to help these kids. Their families will start from a different place, etc. Mother Teresa had a similar challenge. I read somewhere that somebody came to her and said, we can't possibly look after all these people. And she said, forget about the numbers. Look after the one nearest to you. Look after the one nearest to you. Job done. That's all you're asked to do. As you said, as Cathy O'Shaughnessy said, just a tiny little slice, and you're doing that beautifully and wonderfully. And we wish you every success, and we'll do what we can to just nudge the thing forward. We can't make any promise more than that, but lovely to have you both here in the cafe today. And if I may, I'm just going to go to Princess Shelley for just a quick, because I'm conscious we've run over time, but that's because of the richness of the story and the importance of the story. But Princess Shelley has just been monitoring what's been on the cafe. So if you wouldn't mind, Princess Shelley, please.
That's a big undertaking to try and sum up all the love that's in the cafe. It's a big responsibility to try and express what I'm seeing. There's so much gratitude here for the work you and Gemma have done, Eddy. The first thing that came in was Pascal Derrien, who is a previous guest on the cafe. When we were talking about your history, you were saying about the band manager and record shop owner. He was just interested, just to lighten him a little bit, what is your favourite band, Eddy? So if you'd like to comment on that.
Yeah, I've been a fan of Rory Gallagher all my life, right, since I was a kid. Yeah, so and this year is his 25th anniversary. So but we missed out because of COVID. Every year I go to Ballyshannon to the Rory Gallagher Festival, but we missed out this year. But we'll be back next year.
Excellent. I like that a lot. Anne Kristen, who joins us from Malmo in Sweden, said she left a lovely long comment there, but just to paraphrase, she just says that you've a beautiful gift of eyes to see what's going around you, ears to really listen, and a heart to follow together with your other powers. So I love that. I just love that. And there's more to it. But like I say, we are a little bit stuck on time. Christina, who's joined us in Geneva, had asked about Mother Teresa, was hoping to come in for a question, and Colm just touched on the similarity of your journeys there. Cathy, who's joining us in New Hampshire, United States, is thanking you for the work you do. Your strength and generosity is shining through, and appreciating you for being here, for your story, as we appreciate you being here too, Cathy. So thank you for your comment. And Janie Lazar of TEDx it says, what a legacy you're creating. I'm sure Cathy is alongside you in spirit. And she mentioned earlier on that your voice is so understated, it makes her want to listen to your story even more. So yeah, lots and lots. James Finnegan, thanks for being here. James says, I just don't have words. That's when you were bringing us through, and the visualization you were providing for the cafe was just so eloquent, and so it just gave us all such an insight. And I think that's when James popped that in. He just doesn't have the words for it. So yeah, and then Eamon popped in the link, and he also said that he reminded us what you said about if you can impact someone else's life, you can say your life is better, and he agrees with that. So again, apologies everybody, we can't get to it. It's kind of nice when we can't get to it, because it just shows how engrossed everybody is in such a wonderful, rich story. And I'm sorry that we can't add more time to that today. And thank you, Eddy and Gemma, for the great work you do, and more importantly, for being here today to share it with us all. I'll hand you back to Colm. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Princess Shelley. Thank you all. Thank you, everybody, for being here and for coming in to honour Cathy's memory and the story. And you know, that comment that your voice is so understated, Eddy, it's lovely comment, because it does endear you to people, if you like, so they'll listen with keener ears, perhaps. That comment from Anne Kristen, what was it? Eyes to see, ears to listen, and the heart to follow through, or whatever that was. Just beautiful. Just beautiful. So look, it's been a pleasure. Terribly sorry that it's being done in Cathy's memory. You guys, as you said, you grew up together, 41 years together, and then your life changed. Ironically, hundreds of lives will change as a result. So many people are blessed because of what happened, because of what you decided to do, rather than getting bitter and holding it all to yourself. Woe is me, you've stepped out, and it's become bigger and richer as a result. And Cathy O'Shaughnessy will save hundreds, thousands of lives over time. So, bull of us. Okay, let me tell you what's happening in the cafe tomorrow, if I may, and it is Janie Lazar, who's in the cafe today, and she's coming in to us tomorrow, and it's her birthday. Don't mention that. She's coming to us tomorrow, and Janie and I met because Janie is the founder of TEDx Dunleary, and we met last year when I was honoured to be chosen to go and participate, and what a wonderful woman this lady is, and she's got a whole ethos around helping the next generation too. So really excited to have her explain what that's about tomorrow. So please, if you have time tomorrow, come back into the cafe. Last show of the week, episode 65, and it'll be Janie Lazar. Really looking forward to having the chat. Janie, thank you for being here. I want to thank the team as ever. Princess Shelley, this is our new heart emoji now since BB was in yesterday. Right, thank Princess Shelley for producing today's show. Eamon Smith, aka The Monk, for keeping us safe and secure, and for at short notice magicking up those photographs. Thank you for that, Eamon. That wasn't pre-planned. We did that live. And of course, Katrina O'Brien, the lovely Katrina O'Brien, who makes this beautiful tops and tails. Later today, we'll share it out on social media. And I'd like to thank wigwam.ie SME peer support for their ongoing support. But most importantly, I want to thank Gemma for being here. Gemma, lovely to have you in the cafe, and thank you for contributing. And of utmost importance, Eddy O'Shaughnessy. Namaste.
Thanks, Colm.